Hi, everybody. My name is Dan Schönbrunn, and I am the film outreach lead here at Kickstarter in Brooklyn, New York. I work with filmmakers every day, helping them through the process of running Kickstarter campaigns. And I'm constantly talking to filmmakers, film fans, the industry, everybody about how to succeed on Kickstarter and how to have a great experience running a campaign. Welcome to our weekly creator hangout series. This is we do these every week, and it's a live Q&A with a creator from our community. Today, I'm very excited to have with us Andrew Ahn, the director of a film called Spa Night that just wrapped production. And he's going to give us an update on how it's coming along. But Andrew did a fantastic Kickstarter campaign in 2014 to raise money to get through production on the film. I'll let him tell you a little bit about what the film is and his background. But this is for us a really tremendous project and exactly the type of creator and Kickstarter that we love to see on the platform. So, hey, Andrew.
Hi, Dan. How's it going?
I'm good. And I've known Andrew for several years. I used to work at an organization called IFP, and first met him when this project was just a screenplay. And I'm so excited to hear that it's now through production and will be coming out to festivals and beyond next year. Andrew, do you want to tell us a little bit about first the film, and then we'll get into the Kickstarter project itself?
Yeah, definitely. So Spa Night is about a closeted Korean American teenager who helps out at his family's restaurant. He's a really sweet kid, but really stunted. And when the family restaurant's forced to close because of bad business, he takes a part-time job at a local Korean spa in order to help make ends meet. And while he's at the spa, he slowly starts to figure out that it's a popular space for gay men to hook up. And it's something that's both really scary, but also kind of exciting to him. And the story really is this kind of non-traditional coming out story. For us, it wasn't about him coming out to his family or to friends. It was really him coming out to himself. And that was a moment in my life that I thought was really important, but never got to see in gay film. Mm-hmm. The project's been in the works for a really long time. So I've been writing the screenplay for a few years now, and then went to Sundance for their screenwriters lab, and then also Film Independent screenwriting and directing labs, and really wanted to make the film. It wasn't one of those screenplays that I was going to use as a spec or anything like that. I really wanted to share the story with people. And it was really difficult to kind of get the project going because, everybody at the labs and, friends, they're like, oh, like, this is so doable. Like, it's not this like giant sci-fi movie. I didn't need that much money. And I think, I realized, okay, the budget for this is humble and I can do this, but people weren't giving us money. And so, always kind of thought like Kickstarter was an option, and, had conversations with people, and kind of wanted to save the Kickstarter for post-production, and then I realized like, I'm not going to get to post-production unless I do a Kickstarter for pre-production. And kind of decided to use Kickstarter for what it's for, like to actually kickstart the campaign, to kickstart the film. And so I really put in the time and the effort with my producing team to do it and to do it right. And it was really, really hard work, but was super happy with the outcome. And it honestly, like if it wasn't for Kickstarter, I wouldn't have been able to make Spa Night.
So one thing that I hear constantly from filmmakers who've used Kickstarter is that, the perception that they have of what will work on Kickstarter and kind of like the game plan that they go in with and the page that they sculpt, it's about doing your prep work, but it's also about kind of like adapting to the realities of the situation. I guess my question is, what were your expectations going in, and kind of like what was some of the strategy that you put together in kind of the prep phase? And then what based on, I assume, what you learned from a lot of those people that you would talk to about it? And then what changed when you were actually in the process of doing the campaign that you weren't maybe expecting?
Yeah. It's interesting. We actually had a lot of false starts with the launch for the Kickstarter. And that was because, I was really eager to get going on it, but I never felt quite ready. And there are many things that we wanted to kind of get together and prep for, that it just took a certain amount of time. Some of it was really simple. Like some of it was just upping my social media game and, like making sure that I was more active on Facebook and Instagram. I actually just recently started a Twitter because a friend of mine like nagged me to do it. And but during the campaign, we actually had a Spa Night Film Twitter that one of my producers was helping run. There are other things that we wanted to prep for. Like we knew that we wanted to have like a physical event. We wanted to have some place where we could kind of gather people. It wasn't just an online thing. And that would just be another way to like spread the word. And also for me, like feel like that this campaign wasn't like all on a laptop, like that, yeah. Like I could be somewhere and talk to people face to face. So we did have a lot of false starts. I think we wanted to actually launch the campaign sometime in August, and we didn't launch it until October. And a lot of that was because, our goal, we set the goal for the Spa Night Kickstarter at $60,000. I knew that this was going to be $60,000 worth of work. Like I was going to have to put in this amount of effort and time. It wasn't like this was going to be like money falling into my lap. So we set up everything really, really precisely for our Kickstarter campaign. With my producers, we created a Google Calendar that had like to the hour, like what we were going to do. Like we were going to launch like at this time on this day, and we were going to do our first update like within 24 hours. And we had that for the entire campaign. And what I realized during the campaign was that the campaign's really alive. Like you're reacting to a lot of people. There are a lot of things that kind of come up, opportunities that come up that you have to take advantage of. So the first weekend of our campaign was actually National Coming Out Day. And so, for a film that's about coming out, I was like, well, we have to do something. And so we kind of scrambled to kind of put some stuff together. We created a press release to just like send to, some gay blogs. We really wanted to be able to use that to our advantage. And then also, people reaching out to us, who heard about us that we had no idea about. So there was an online publication that deals with spa culture. And it was super random. And we were like, do you know what this film is about? Do you actually really want to chat with us? And they were like, yeah, it's totally cool. And so I did an interview with them that was some nice press. And then, the backers themselves, like you never know who's going to back your campaign. And, kind of starting the second week of the campaign, we really started to notice a lot of people who I didn't know personally, that my producers didn't know personally, that were finding out about the campaign through like friends of friends or through some of the press that we were getting through some various like Asian American blogs, gay blogs. And I would talk to these people. I would make sure that I would follow up after they donated to the campaign. And ask them like, how did you hear about us? And thank you so much. And would you be willing to keep spreading the word? And some of them would tell me like, hey, like you should contact these people. Like they're a really great resource, and they have they have a community that might be willing to donate or would be interested in this. So as much as we could prepare for it, there was a lot of work that happened that kind of just sprung up. And because, I felt so far away from the goal for so long in the campaign, I knew I was going to do it.
Yeah. Let's talk about the goal. And I think this is, even for me, honestly, like one of the toughest questions is, how do you set your goal? What were some of the factors that played into the decision to go for $60,000? Was that for the entire film? Was that for a portion of the film? And how did you choose the number that felt both doable to you but also impactful?
Yeah, the number was it was really hard to figure out. We knew that we wanted a number that could actually like really make a big impact on our budget. And with $60,000, we knew that like we could get started on the film, and that was really kind of looking at casting costs and location scouting. We were looking at trying to figure out like basic crew. And then the other thing was that we had talked to a couple of investors prior to the Kickstarter. Like I mentioned before, we thought we might be able to raise the money for production through investors and then actually do a Kickstarter for post-production. And a lot of our investors were really super into the project, but they were kind of hesitant to be, first money in. And so we were like, okay, if we do a Kickstarter for this amount, will you guys come in?
Right.
And a lot of the investors like, yes, because, it's a substantial amount. And then, some of them actually even, promised, like, if we reach our Kickstarter goal, like they will donate. And so we actually raised an additional $35,000 through the Kickstarter campaign by using the Kickstarter campaign to find investors. Awesome. So our $60,000 campaign was effectively actually $95,000, which was gonna, totally get us through into production. So it was a lot of hard work and it made me really nervous, but we decided if we were gonna do this, we were gonna do it big, and $60,000 was the goal.
Cool. Let's talk a little bit. I want to talk more in a little bit about all of the outreach and everything you did. And you've already touched on a lot of this, but how you brought people to the page. But let's talk about the page itself. I think one thing that's always struck me about your Kickstarter campaign and your film is that the film it's this very personal autobiographical story, and it's a drama with, fairly heavy themes and subject matter. Your Kickstarter campaign was so playful. You had rewards like, we'll sing you a karaoke song. A lot of the outreach that you did was really funny and charming and had this energy to it that I'm not sure matches exactly the tone of the film itself. So can you talk a little bit about that and a little bit about how you arrived at the different elements and themes and tones of the Kickstarter campaign?
Yeah. So I'd gotten a lot of advice from people. Part of the prep work that I did was to talk to a lot of Kickstarter creators. So I talked to like some friends who had done really successful campaigns. PJ Reval did this documentary, Before You Know It. And then I also talked to a friend of mine from CalArts, Ruthie Doyle. I wanted to get as much information as possible. And people were telling me like, you have to have fun with the campaign. And I knew that like the tone of Spa Night is super serious. It's a drama. And if you watch the video, which, I'll tell people to watch it, but I'm not going to watch it ever again. It's a very sincere kind of call out for help and I think gets to the tone of the film pretty accurately. The page itself is also pretty serious. The content, the director's statement, the synopsis, the images, they're all there to kind of evoke a sense of the film. What we decided to do was, okay, if all that stuff is going to be really sincere, like, let's just have fun with the updates, you know? And I didn't really quite know what that meant. But then, you know, after the first few days, my producers and we met up to, one of our rewards was to scream your name out into the world so that you would get good karma. And my producers and we went up to the Griffith Observatory, and we had this kind of first powwow just to talk about like how the first few days were going. And we were so stressed out, we just started crying. And we were so nervous about the whole thing. And then when we recorded ourselves like screaming these names out, it was actually really cathartic and nice. And then we realized like, oh, like we just need to do more of this. Like we just need to have fun and enjoy ourselves during this process, because if we're nervous the whole time, these 30 days, it's going to be terrible. And so, you know, we decided to kind of just go with, like, a lot of these are just kind of inside jokes, you know, like Ryan Gosling, like we used a whole bunch of the Hey Girl kind of memes to just have fun. And there are a lot of like spa puns and a lot of like random photoshopping that I was doing just to like keep myself sane. And then also, I think to give our community and our backers a sense of our personalities and who we are, and that like, yes, we're making this very serious film, but that we're fun people and that you should help us because, you know, we're trying really hard to the point where we're kind of making fools of ourselves. And I think that was good for many reasons. And I don't think that it confused people. You know, I don't think it was people thinking that like Spa Night was going to be this like screwball comedy. I just think that they really could tell like, okay, these are the people, like the creators, and then this is the product that they're making. And I like both of them for different reasons.
Totally. Let's talk a little bit about, you know, I always think of outreach as two layers. There's talking to and engaging the community that you already know, and then there's breaking outside of that and, you know, hopefully bringing in people that are going to care about this film that you don't already know. But let's start with perhaps the easier of the two, which is the direct community of supporters, you know, friends, family, peers, any and everyone that, you know, you maybe thought could be a supporter of this project going into it. How did you kind of tell the world that you were doing this, and how did you kind of like make that personal appeal to people to be a part of it?
That was, you know, again, that was kind of part of the prep work where, you know, some of it was actually just talking about it, you know, like when I was going to dinner or meeting up with friends, you know, going out, I would just say like, oh, I'm doing a Kickstarter campaign. Like I wouldn't even say like, would you help me do this or would you help me do that? Like I was just letting them know that it was something happening in my life and that I was preparing for it. The other thing that I did was for a few very close friends who I knew would support me. I emailed them ahead of time and said, hey, like I'm doing this campaign. Like, would you be willing to donate the first day, you know, so that it like we can have a good start. And I think what was cool about that was that like my friends felt like they were a part of it, you know, like they were part of the campaign and they were invested in it. And if it did well. So a lot of it was actually very direct contact, you know, just for like months before. Like it wasn't just like the scramble, like the few days before. It was making sure that people knew that like I was really preparing for this, and that because I was taking it seriously, like they would also take it seriously. And then with family, it was, you know, it's just saying, it's like, okay, guys, like this is something that I'm doing. Like, can you help? And of course, like they're super supportive. But it was one of those things where it's just like any other backer. Like you have to sell them on it, you know. Like my parents, like they wanted to see the page, you know, like they wanted to know, and I think a lot of what your closer community is interested in is also just knowing like what you've been working on. With Facebook, like during the campaign, you know, all my friends, I made sure that I wasn't overwhelming their news feeds. You know, it wasn't like Spawnite all the time, because there is a certain point where people are just gonna forget about it. So I just made sure like, okay, like I'm gonna post on like Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, and then, you know, like Friday, Saturday, like no one's on Facebook anyway. Like I'm gonna give myself a break, and I'm gonna give them a break. So
Cool.
that was the immediate community.
And yeah, I mean, when you think about the wider community, I mean, it sounds like you had a lot of success with this, but I think for a lot of creators, it can be so vexing to think of like, how do I get the internet to pay attention to this, the nebulous, gigantic internet? What was their strategy for kind of digging down to get somewhere more specific about that? It sounds like there was a lot of inbound, which is amazing, but what were you doing to proactively build ties with an extended community that you didn't already know?
Yeah, some of it was, a big part of it was press. You know, I got in touch through a friend, Evan Roberts, who also did a Kickstarter campaign with Huffington Post's Gay Voices blog. And I reached out to like Coriam Magazine, Angry Asian Man, you know, a lot of these community-based online resources, blogs, that I knew would be interested in the film. You know, I was never sure if they would just kind of pick it up on their own. I had to go out there and say something about it. And so reaching out to these people, and then another part of it was, you know, any backer that did find us through one of these press opportunities, you know, I would ask them like, you know, if you have any friends, like please like share the Kickstarter with them. You know, if you have friends who'd be interested in this kind of project. You know, other things that we did were, you know, like trying to stay really active on Twitter. And then, you know, the other, for me, what was really helpful, I mentioned this earlier, was that we had these like physical events, and just having people creating a Facebook event for it, and then having people invite friends in different cities. So I went to San Francisco to do a screening of my short films, and then to promote the Kickstarter, I also did a screening here in Los Angeles with Visual Communications. You know, it was really about using the connections that we already had. So like using that immediate community to find out what the wider community was.
Yeah. And tell me a little more about the events, because I'm always fascinated to hear about, you know, what was strategically helpful to do in a live setting. How much do you think it impacted the campaign itself? And then how did you balance the workload of producing an event versus kind of plugging in online to support the Kickstarter?
Yeah, that last part, I mean, balancing the workload was really tricky. But I will say, you know, I had a really great team of people. My producers, Kelly Thomas, David Araniello, Julia Carrizo, Keejan Kim, they put in so much time and effort into this. You know, obviously, because it's such a personal story, I was kind of the face of it, along with like Ryan Gosling. But thank you, Ryan Gosling.
He's watching right now.
That would be insane. I hope he asks a question. But yeah, the physical events, my producers were a really big part of helping put those on, and also our kind of community like sponsors, you know, so Visual Communications in LA, and then CAM up in San Francisco. You know, they were really helpful in putting that together. The reason why we really wanted to do it was because I wanted the opportunity for people to get a better sense of my work. And so I showed all of my short films plus the scenes from the Film Independent Directing Lab that we did. and then also, you know, I could invite people out to a free screening, and then, you know, have the Kickstarter link in the email. And that invite felt so much nicer and also easier to send than the email that was like, hey, can you give me some? I pulled out my headphones.
Technical difficulties.
It's an easier email to send to be like, hey, come to this event, you know? And so it was a way of spreading the word about the Kickstarter campaign without having it be like,
Totally.
give me money, you know? And I left it to them, you know, it's like, if they wanted to donate to the Kickstarter after the screening, like, great. And if not, at least you got to know me, at least you got to see some films, and I hope you enjoyed them.
I'm curious about, it sounds like you were so involved in kind of the strategy, the marketing, almost like the selling of this campaign to the wider community, which I find to be a very different skill set in a lot of ways, and maybe also a similar skill set in certain ways to the act of like being a creative person and making films. It sounds like you were almost producing your own campaign as you know, as well as film. I wonder, like, what to you was this something that you felt like you were a natural fit for as a filmmaker? Were there things that you had learned from pulling together films that inspired you, or was it a totally different creative process?
You know, I have to say, like, as hard work as it was, and it was definitely hard work. Like, I totally lost like 7 pounds like during the campaign just out of stress.
You're welcome.
Thank you. I know I look great. But I did feel like I enjoyed it, and felt like I was getting a hang of what it takes to do this. I do think it's really different from filmmaking. It's a really separate skill, but I do think that they helped. So with the Kickstarter, I really had to think about, like, what is this film? Like, what is this thing that I'm making? And I realized, like, as I thought about how to talk about it, I got to know the film in a way that I didn't before. And, you know, throughout the campaign, people asking me questions about the film, it made me realize, like, oh, these are questions that I haven't thought about, and they're really helping me, you know, like with screenplay rewrites and, you know, visualizing. People, you know, would some of my Kickstarter backers would ask me, like, oh, have you seen this movie, or have you, like, heard about this photographer? And I thought, like, that was really, like, creatively really nourishing. So, you know, as much as I think that they're very separate skills, I do think that they can work together. You can use your Kickstarter to help you creatively, in a way that, like, I feel like if I had waited, you know, until post-production to do the Kickstarter, there might have been all these things that I found out about after that would have been kind of, it's like, oh, I wish I would have known about this.
Right.
So yeah,
that's so interesting.
I really, you know, I think that they can work together, and for me, it's like that's what made it fun.
Right. So we're almost out of time, but I want to just ask one more question. And yeah, I guess I would love to know, just like, give us an update on everything that's happened since the Kickstarter. You know, if you want to talk a little bit about, like, if the Kickstarter has kind of changed your perception of how you made the film or how you plan to release the film, but just let us know, like, where you're at with it, when we can expect to see it, and just kind of, like, you know, everything that's happened since.
Yeah, so we wrapped just before, we wrapped on July 3rd. So, like, Independence Day for me was sleeping.
Drinking
and then sleeping. But it was a really tough process, but I really enjoyed the shoot. And I will say that, like, having that Kickstarter community behind me was really great. You know, like, had I made this without doing the Kickstarter, I feel like I would have I would have had to rely more on just kind of my own, like, personal push. But there's this part of me that was like, oh my God, I have, like, over 600 backers who, like, want this film to happen. Like, I need to do this, not just for myself, but for them. And so it made the film feel like there was a greater desire for me to like kick butt on it. So we're editing the film now. My editor, Yannis Takidakis, he's like an awesome guy, and we had a rough cut, you know, like the third day after the shoot that we could watch, and it's really coming together well. Hoping that audiences can see the film, you know, starting 2016, and I think for me, what's nice is that like post-production can kind of feel like you're in this little like bubble, but with Kickstarter, like, you know, writing updates and like having people ask about the film, reach out to me, it's nice because it feels like, oh, okay, like this is the audience. So, you know, I think the Kickstarter made the Spa Night process not only doable, but also like more enjoyable and more connected with the world.
That's awesome. Well, Andrew, thank you so much for joining us. It's amazing to hear about how the film is coming along, and we can't wait to see it.
Cool. Thanks, guys.
So if everybody wants to, do you want to shout out some of your like social channels to, you know, if people want to look up and learn more about the film?
Yeah, so it's facebook.com/SpaNightFilm. And then also our Twitter hashtag is SpaNightFilm. And then you can also follow me personally on Twitter, Andrew on Films.
Awesome. Thanks, Andrew.
Yep, thank you.
Good luck.